Hello, everybody, and today I'm back with part two of the Jack Kruse, Huberman, Rick Rubin podcast breakdown. And today I'm going to be breaking down and explaining the leptin melanocortin pathway and Pomc for you guys. So I want to start out talking about leptin. So leptin is a hormone that was discovered in 1994, and it turns out to be a really important hormone because it actually regulates total body energy balance and fat mass. And the way that it actually does that is through regulating food intake, and it actually decreases appetite, and then regulating metabolic rate, and it actually increases metabolic rate. And so you can see how this is so important because basically the gold standard that you're trying to find in decreasing obesity in a person or the population, and decreasing fat mass and increasing metabolic health is to decrease appetite and increase metabolic rate. And because both of those things help to regulate metabolic status and metabolic health, total body weight, and specifically both of these things help to decrease total body fat mass. And so what's so interesting is that leptin actually helps to decrease fat mass and keep people leaner and keep them from becoming obese. So you can see how this hormone is so important for function and health in the human body. And then additionally, leptin actually has other functions in the body. So it regulates reproductive function, and Dr. Kruse talks about how he'll say leptin controls fecundity, which is basically reproductive function. And then it also plays a role in fetal growth. It plays a role in pro-inflammatory immune responses and the immune system. It plays a role, in angiogenesis, which is basically the growth of blood vessels, and it also plays a role in lipolysis. Lipolysis is basically the breakdown of fat, which that makes sense given everything we set up here. And so basically you can see just how critical this hormone is because it basically helps keep us metabolically healthy. It helps us lose fat mass and stay lean and help us not get obese. But what's so interesting with the tie to circadian biology and quantum biology is that good circadian rhythm hygiene is really key for regulating leptin levels. So in other words, if your circadian rhythm is all out of whack and is not aligned, you're not watching the sunrise, you're staying up on your phone late at night. This has been, there's so many studies on this. I just linked one here, but it's been very clearly shown that poor circadian rhythm hygiene actually dysregulates leptin levels, and it can actually cause leptin resistance, which is basically very similar to insulin resistance. And that basically causes dysregulation of leptin levels and the hormone leptin, and then that results in basically fat mass and fat accumulation. And you're eating more, your metabolic rate goes down, and it's harder to not get overweight and to not accumulate excess fat mass. And so that's why this hormone leptin is so important. And additionally, that's one of the big reasons why good circadian rhythm hygiene is so important, and so important to do these things, see the sunrise, and also to not be on your phone late at night, to avoid blue light exposure late at night, and also to wear blue light blockers if you are going to stay up past the sunrise. So this is one of the big reasons why good circadian rhythm hygiene is so important for health. So Dr. Jack Kruse's big eureka moment originally was actually the leptin melano pathway and him discovering it and discovering its importance. And so I want to actually just go over that for you guys and explain what this pathway is to you guys. So basically, leptin is made in the adipocytes of the subcutaneous tissue in your fat. So basically, all throughout your body, basically right under your skin, these fat cells called adipocytes are sitting there, and that's basically where leptin is made and stored. And what happens is actually at night, as the sun's going down, as it starts to turn the evening and night, leptin is actually released via circadian mechanism, and it actually goes to the hypothalamus in the brain and attaches to these leptin receptors in what's called the arcuate nucleus within the hypothalamus. This specific nucleus within the hypothalamus called the arcuate nucleus, and specifically attaches to leptin receptors within that arcuate nucleus, and specifically it attaches to Pomc neurons that express these leptin receptors. So leptin leaves these adipocytes basically at night, goes to the hypothalamus, goes to the arcuate nucleus within the hypothalamus, and attaches to the Pomc receptors on there. These Pomc receptors then get cleaved into the things that there's basically 6 end products of Pomc that Dr. Kruse talks about. One of the main ones being the melanocyte stimulating hormone. Again, there's an alpha, beta, and gamma MSH that we're about to talk about here very soon. So the melanocyte stimulating hormones, the alpha, beta, and gamma MSH, then attach to a different receptor, their receptor, the MC4R, the melanocortin 4 receptors, in the paraventricular nucleus in the hypothalamus. And then that goes out to the peripheral circulation. And again, we're about to talk about the melanocyte stimulating hormones, the alpha, beta, and gamma MSH. But those hormones actually act to decrease food intake and increase energy expenditure. And so again, you can see how important this is for helping us, avoid obesity, avoid gaining excess fat mass, staying lean, staying healthy, and having good metabolic health. You can see how important this pathway is because it literally decreases our appetite and decreases food intake and actually increases our basal metabolic rate, which helps us burn fat and avoid gaining excess fat and stay lean and stay healthy. So I introduced Pomc on the last slide, you guys. Now I want to really dive into Pomc. So like I said, Pomc is a peptide that actually gets cleaved into 6 different end products. And I'm going to really just lay these out for you guys really simply and clearly here. So the first peptide, or the first product that it creates that I want to go over, is ACTH. And basically, ACTH is the precursor signaling molecule to cortisol. So ACTH gets into the bloodstream from this Pomc cleavage, and then it goes to the zona fasciculata of the adrenal gland. So basically it goes to this specific layer in the adrenal gland and stimulates the release of cortisol. And what cortisol does is it causes blood glucose to increase. So basically it creates glucose from cortisol. And basically, if you go back, well, what did the cortisol come from? It came from ACTH, and that came from Pomc, and Pomc is basically cleaved by light. It's basically cleaved by light. And so Dr. Kruse talks a lot about how we can make glucose from Pomc from light. Dr. Kruse talks a lot about how we can make glucose from light. And this is the specific mechanism. This is the exact way that we actually make glucose from light. And so when you hear him talk about how we can actually, get diabetes and increase blood glucose via light, this is the mechanism, because specific wavelengths of light will increase ACTH levels. That increases cortisol. That increases blood glucose. And so that can actually spike glucose and lead to diabetes. And specifically, we know that blue light can actually increase blood glucose levels, and circadian rhythm disruption can increase blood glucose levels. So you can see the mechanisms here of how basically disruption of our light environment can actually lead to disruption of blood glucose levels and potentially diabetes. So another really important end product here, the next one I want to go over, is beta endorphin. So beta endorphin is literally basically an opioid, and it decreases pain sensation. So this is another thing that Dr. Kruse talks about a lot, where we have this enormous chronic pain epidemic in America and really all over the world. And one of the huge reasons for it is that we're not taking advantage of this natural opioid that's supposed to be being created within us basically the entire day, this beta endorphin, which gets cleaved when we are actually outside and in sunlight. So when we're in sunlight, Pomc gets cleaved into beta endorphin in the brain. That literally decreases pain sensation and makes us feel better. So we have this huge pain epidemic, and especially this chronic pain epidemic. And one of the reasons why Dr. Kruse and I believe is because we're not getting out in sunlight and having Pomc cleaved in this beta endorphin product, which actually helps to decrease pain sensation and make us feel better. So that's a really important end product as well. Another important end product is CLIP. So CLIP stands for corticotropin-like intermediate peptide. And so its function hasn't been fully elucidated, but one of the things that we pretty much know that it does is causes insulin secretion. And it also influences the brain and affects other behaviors related to stress and sleep. But basically, we know that CLIP causes insulin secretion. So again, you can see that through our light environment, we can actually have the release and regulation of glucose levels and insulin levels. So again, when you see Dr. Kruse talk about how a poor light environment and poor circadian rhythm regulation can actually cause diabetes, this is the mechanism by how we think this is happening, where basically different light environment and different circadian rhythm regulation or dysregulation is causing the differential cleavage of Pomc products to create ACTH to raise blood glucose and CLIP to actually raise high insulin and high blood glucose are, basically the what happens in diabetes. And so you can actually get diabetes potentially through just a poor light environment and poor circadian rhythm dysregulation through this differential cleavage of Pomc. So that's a really important mechanism that I want to just lay out for you guys here. And so lastly, we're on to the alpha, beta, and gamma MSH. Again, MSH stands for Melanin stimulating hormone, or excuse me, a melanocyte stimulating hormone. And basically these alpha, beta, and gamma MSH, so all of them increase melanin synthesis. So again, alpha, beta, and gamma MSH, all three of them actually stimulate melanin synthesis. Again, MSH stands for melanocyte stimulating hormone. Sorry, I misspoke just a second ago. But so all three stimulate melanin synthesis, but then additionally, alpha and beta MSH also decrease appetite and increase metabolic rate. And the alpha MSH actually does so much more powerfully than the beta MSH. So again, when you have that that picture that I just showed on the previous slide, where basically leptin is regulating these MSH molecules, and then the MSH can go out through the hypothalamus and get in the peripheral circulation and actually decrease appetite and increase metabolic rate. And again, that helps us to stay lean, to avoid gaining fat and to be metabolically healthy and have a good healthy body weight and not gain excess fat mass. So again, all of these peptide end products are extremely important. And we're going to talk about the melanin aspect of the MSH molecules here in just a second, because that's also extremely important. So now I want to talk about melanin. So again, remember, melanin is made from alpha, beta, and gamma MSH, and those products themselves are cleaved from Pomc, and the cleavage of Pomc is actually controlled by the light that you're getting and the circadian rhythm regulation. And so melanin is an extremely important molecule, really, especially for a lot of the things that Dr. Jack Kruse talks about, and for quantum biology and metabolic processes as a whole, as understood within quantum biology. And so melanin is present actually in all living kingdoms except for viruses, and it's actually shown to be present in almost all human organs. And again, there's papers in the literature talking about how this clearly indicates the fundamental importance of melanin for all life forms. Just a little bit about melanin. Melanin is a biological polymer, which is basically just a substance that consists of macromolecules that are made up of many repeating subunits, as you can see right over here. And there's papers, again, in the literature talking about the universal importance of melanin to life across all species. And this paper actually stated that there's really a need to accept melanins as the fourth primordial class of biological polymers, along with nucleic acids, which make up DNA, proteins, which basically make up us, and then polysaccharides. So again, you can see in the literature, and I've actually read about 300 papers on melanin in the medical literature, and there's so clearly, just a knowledge and acceptance, in the literature of how important melanin is. But I just don't think that knowledge has really gotten out to the public yet, and is not well understood by many doctors even as well. So that's what I want to talk about today, and one of the big things that I want to try to help educate people on. Now let's talk about some of the really unique properties of melanin. So melanin in the literature has been shown to be a proven antioxidant, anti-inflammatory molecule. It's actually a heavy metal chelator, and in fact is actually the most important heavy metal chelator in the body, and in the literature has been shown and proven to absorb a really remarkably wide range of toxins to the body. It's also an immunomodulator and plays a very important and extremely underappreciated role in immune system function. It protects against DNA damage and also actually helps possibly repair broken DNA. It's a neuroprotective agent, and it's actually heavily indicated in Parkinson's disease. And again, you'll hear Dr. Jack Kruse talk about that area in the brain in this podcast of the substantia nigra, and basically that's the area that is well known to basically be affected in Parkinson's disease. But again, the reason that it's actually called the substantia nigra is because there's so much melanin in it. And we actually know in the literature, in studies that I've read, that when you lose the melanin in that area, the neuromelanin in that area, that's when Parkinson's disease basically occurs. And so again, melanin is extremely important for the health of our brain and as a neuroprotective agent. What's also one of the other really interesting aspects that's so important to Dr. Jack Kruse's work, and one of the big points of this podcast, is that melanin actually plays a role in making energy and in metabolism. So melanin has been proven to aid in metabolism and energy creation. And when light hits melanin, it actually charge separates nearby water molecules to create molecular oxygen, molecular hydrogen, and at least 4 free electrons. And this is really important to Dr. Jack Kruse's work. And again, what's so interesting is that, what does the mitochondria and the electron transport chain in the mitochondria actually need to make ATP and produce energy? Literally, all it needs is molecular oxygen, hydrogen, and free electrons to run through the electron transport chain. So when light hits melanin, that's actually, it basically creates everything you need to run, mitochondrial metabolism to make ATP. And in the literature, it's been, clearly shown that melanin is actually playing a role in metabolism and energy creation, both through this mechanism and just through the creation of these free electrons, which helps contribute to the redox potential, which is really important. So melanin also acts as an amorphous semiconductor, and Dr. Jack Kruse, talks a lot about semiconductors, which I'm going to talk about as well in my next presentation, part 3. So that's really important as well. And then lastly, so it appears that melanin also plays a role in helping to actually create that Becker's DC electric healing and regeneration current in neurons. So Dr. Jack Kruse hypothesized that melanin actually helps create the DC electric current that Dr. Becker found. And again, that DC electric current actually causes the healing and regeneration in basically all animals, and remarkably even as plants as well. And this is actually something that I want to ask Dr. Kruse about and get confirmation with him, because this is something that he mentioned only one time I've ever heard, but from what I understand, I think that he believes that Pomc and melanin are actually playing a role when light hits them that's what's actually creating the DC electric current in neurons. But that's something I want to kind of ask him about and get his confirmation. But if it is playing a role in this, then that's another extremely important role as well. And then lastly, the other really important thing is that melanin is actually a mobile and neuroplastic neuroectodermal derivative. And the neuroectodermal is just a term from embryology. Basically, it's just a certain layer of the embryological formation in early humans. But basically what this means is that melanin and melanocytes are actually mobile. And so what this means is that basically we have within us this built-in system that is literally neuroplastic and mobile. So this system is mobile and can literally move wherever it's needed to actually move to a certain part of the brain and actually contribute to helping that area make energy or performing other neuroprotective functions and heavy metal chelation and things like that. So we literally have this system that can move wherever it's needed to help create energy and support healing and metabolism within our nervous system, which is really remarkable, and that's why it's so important, and it's the reason why Dr. Kruse has been banging this drum and talking about this and emphasizing melanin in this aspect of quantum biology for so long. And so now, just to sum up that last slide, what we were talking about with melanin, so basically, the vast majority of mainstream medicine views melanin just merely as a byproduct from toxic sun exposure, and that melanin is basically merely just a molecule produced in the skin to protect us from harmful UV radiation. But from the data that I presented in the slideshow and my research from reading about 300 papers on melanin, it's my hypothesis, and it's the ideas of Dr. Jack Kruse that he was presenting in this podcast, that melanin, again, actually appears to be a mobile workhorse molecule capable of really just an astounding variety of extremely important functions. And specifically, it appears that melanin, and specifically the cells that produce them, these melanocyte cells, are actually neuroplastic mobile cells that can actually respond to signals of distress and actually migrate wherever they're needed the most within the brain and central nervous system to then produce melanin in that area and to give that area of the brain its healing properties of helping produce more energy, of heavy metal chelation, etc. And so we really, again, just have this amazing system where these melanocytes and melanin are these mobile workhorse cells that are able to migrate within the nervous system and basically lend a helping hand to any area of the brain that needs it. any area really of the central nervous system that basically sends out these distress signals and needs basically help, needs the properties of melanin, which again are so wide and varied, but probably the most important being that it actually helps contribute to metabolism and actually helps create energy locally. And so any area within the nervous system that actually needs basically help and is basically getting low in energy metabolism, it appears that this melanocyte molecules, they can actually migrate to that area and support that area of the brain and nervous system, which is so important. And that's why it's so important to actually get outside and get a healthy dose of sunlight each day if you can, and because that actually helps support the creation of these melanocyte cells and melanin, which then those cells are able to actually help support and heal your brain and nervous system, and even just your tissues in general. So this is such an important concept that I wanted to just explain to you guys how this amazing system really works. And then this last point that I just wanted to really emphasize with you guys is, so not only does melanin make energy, but it actually appears to absorb almost the entire electromagnetic spectrum of frequencies, and then uses all of it to charge separated water to make that energy. And so it's possible that it actually acts as a built-in Faraday cage to some extent as well, to actually help protect us from non-native EMFs, which are a huge problem in our modern society, as you probably know. And then lastly, I just want to emphasize this point that Dr. Kruse talked about in this podcast, which is that melanin is the screen. So melanin is the screen that's absorbing the light from the projectors, the projector in the external environment being the sun, and the projector in the internal environment being the mitochondria and the mitochondrial biophoton release that the mitochondria releases with metabolism. So melanin is absorbing the light from both of these sources and then takes that photonic energy and puts it into the water to actually separate the water to create energy and aid in metabolism. And again, this is the main way that melanin exerts its healing properties. And this is why melanin is so important, and ultimately why it's so important to try to get a healthy amount of sun exposure daily. So then for my last slide here, I just want to explain how Pomc and melanin fit into Dr. Jack Kruse's evolutionary theory of melanin and light and the evolution of the brain from cephalopods to modern humans. So in this podcast, Huberman talked about these cephalopods a lot. And so I just want to explain the importance and significance and what they were actually talking about. So basically these cephalopods, which have existed for hundreds of millions of years, they were basically these animals, which I've got right here. This is actually an amazing picture of a cephalopod actually emitting the light to attract prey. So these cephalopods were basically human brain 1.0. So we're literally looking at this cephalopod's brain basically here in its nervous system, because cephalopods don't have a skull. And basically the main point is that these cephalopods would discharge their light and melanin into the environment, and they would emit their light to try to attract prey, and they'd emit their melanin to basically help use it as a shield to escape from predators. And basically what's happened from cephalopod, which is human brain 1.0, to us current modern humans right now, is that evolution has learned via hundreds of millions of years to retain the light and melanin and actually use it and harness it to generate energy, and use that energy to actually build and enable much bigger brains, computing power, and complex brains and more complex organisms. And so this is why Dr. Kruse, mentions like your skin is essentially a solar panel for the energy hog in your head, that being your brain, the Ferrari engine in your head, because basically over the hundreds of millions of years, from cephalopods and their human brain 1.0 version to modern humans now, we've basically internalized our light production and melanin and harnessed both of them, and yoked them together to be able to actually harness them and use them to create, massive amounts of energy, which has actually fueled our evolution and allowed us to become these much more complex organisms with bigger brains and much greater computing power. So again, you can see the central importance of melanin, Pomc, and then light and sunlight for human health. And this is basically one of the main points of that podcast, and that's why Dr. Jack Kruse talks about it so much. And so that brings me to the end of my video. Thanks for watching, And if you like the video, please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe, as that really helps support the channel. And then lastly, I just want to say as a disclaimer that this video is purely for educational purposes, and this is not medical advice. Thank you.